Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to the episode number 57 of the series of tutorial on how to build a premium theme for WordPress. Welcome again. In this tutorial, we're gonna continue the work we were doing for our contact form page. So right now we have this super simple form that we're gonna style in a future lesson. In this moment, in this lesson, I wanna focus on the backend functionality. So all the functionalities related to jQuery, sending the data that a user writes in this form and saving that data in our custom post type in our WordPress administration panel. So let's take care about that, and then in the future we can take care about styling the front end and make it maybe look better or look more inviting, whatever. For now, let's just focus on the actual functionality of this contact form. So let's access our text editor, and if we access our contact-form.php file is the file template that we are including inside our shortcode to generate a contact form, we have to define an ID for our form if we want to use it as a reference in our JavaScript jQuery submission. I'm going to call this form ID sunset contact form, and of course you can use a class, you can use a different ID, you can use whatever value you want, it doesn't really matter. Let's save this and let's access our JavaScript file called sunset.js. That is the front-end JavaScript that we're using. Let's scroll all the way down at the bottom and let's create a new functionality or a new section with a comment called contact form submission. And here we can use jQuery to detect when our contact form is being submitted. So let's use the $sign, open the regular brackets, and inside the regular brackets, let's define the ID of our contact form. In my case is sunset contact form. And then we can use the .on detection, and the action that we want to detect is submit. So this, whatever thing we're gonna write, is gonna get activated when our contact form, recognized by the ID, it's submitted by the user. Let's put a comma, write function, open a function, regular brackets, curly brackets, and then put a semicolon at the end. So basically whatever function, whatever code we're going to write inside this open function is going to be activated only when our contact form is submitted, when our code recognizes that the contact form has been submitted. And just as a test to see if it actually works, let's return a console log and let's return a simple string called form submitted. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh. Of course, let's open our console and let's have our console open here. We don't have any error messages. In the previous lesson, we declare all these fields as required. So Firefox or like a modern browser recognize that this is an HTML5 type of required form, so we cannot submit it without filling stuff. So let's fill a little bit of fake content and then let's submit this form. Of course, if we click submit, the form is gonna submit, it's gonna actually refresh the page and go to the location that is specified in the source code. So if we access here, we have the action going to this hash, so we don't have any page. In order to prevent this form to be submitted, we don't want this, we don't want the page to reload, we wanna handle everything with jQuery, we can avoid the form to submit, to have its own default behavior. In order to do that, we have to hook to this function the actual event that it's being triggered on submit. To do that, we have to write a letter inside the regular brackets of the function. Usually we use the letter E, but you can use whatever letter like A, you can use the actual form tag, whatever. Usually you will find all these codes with an E because it stands for element of whatever things we're going to trigger here. So here we can recall the element and use the built-in function to prevent default behavior. And this, prevent And this is a default method of JavaScript. It's saying basically to avoid whatever default behavior this element triggered has and don't do anything. So now if we save it, let's go back in our front end contact form. Let's refresh. Let's write again our stuff message, and if we submit now, nothing is happening. You can see like we're not getting refresh or like push to another page. But if you notice in the console, we have the console log form submitted. That is the actual text that I wrote here, console log. So that's perfect. Now we know that our jQuery function is properly hooked to the form, and we are avoiding the form to submit to whatever location we don't really want. So right now it's time to collect all the information. First, let's create a bunch of variables. So var, and we're gonna have the variable name that is gonna be equal to the form field with a specific name. So if we access the contact form, we know that the input where we asking the user to put the name, it's ID name. So this is kind of common. You can have an ID called name in many places. This is not something unique like Sunset form ID, form name. So this could be kind of weird, because if we write simply the variable name, it's equal to $, and we check the ID name and we just return the value, these ID name could be used, especially if the user uses other plugins, could be used in other forms, in other inputs. So it's kind of dangerous to do like this. In order to avoid this problem, let's always refer an ID or an input inside this actual form. So before doing anything else, let's define another variable. Then it's gonna be called form. In my case, you can call it whatever you want, and the form is gonna be equal to this. This in jQuery stands for the parent element of this whatever function we're in it. So we are currently inside a function that it's triggered by the Sunset contact form. So the variable form is gonna retain the ownership of this. So in this case, instead of using $sign and crawling the entire DOM of our page to check this name ID, we can just simply call form.find name ID and return the value. So let's check if it actually works. First, let's console log the form variable, and then let's console log the name variable. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh, and let's submit a contact. And console is not defined. Sorry, console is not console. That was a typo. Let's refresh again. Let's submit. And now we have two console logs. The first one is the object. You can see we are returning this form, and the form has the hash Sunset contact form. So it's referring to the entire form of our page. And the second value that we are ejecting in the console is the name that I input here. If I put something else, AJAX, submit, we're gonna have the AJAX cast. So that's perfect. With this form, we're avoiding to crawl the entire page and avoiding to grab maybe another input that uses the same ID. We don't really know. So let's avoid this by using this form stuff. This episode is brought to you by HostGator, the powerful, easy, and affordable web hosting. If you're confused by virtual hosts, server settings, and database configurations, HostGator is the solution for you with 24/7 support, award-winning tools, and one-click script install options. Get your own domain today and use the promo code HALICAD to get 25% off. Now we have to declare other variables. In order to avoid to repeat too many things, this var name, or like var variable, we can put a comma and then declare another variable. In this case, it's gonna be email, and the email is gonna be equal to pretty much this one. So form find ID email, if it's correct, yes, the ID email of the input, and always the value. And then we can duplicate this, put a comma here, and this one is the message. And of course, because we are redeclaring another variable, we can put a comma here and go into another line. Now it's time to create an AJAX call. It's something that we already did a lot of times. If we scroll back up, we will find a little bit here a section called AJAX function that is basically all the functions that it's handling the sunset load more option. When we click load more, it's going to return more post. What we have to do, basically, if you're lazy like me, just copy exactly the same things that you already have. So first of all, we have an AJAX URL that we have to define and we didn't define. So let's copy this, let's paste it right here at the end. And the AJAX URL has to be declared inside the form itself. In this case, it's form and not that. So form data URL, we have to define a data URL to return the admin location, the URL location of our ajax admin.php file. So in order to do that, we already know how to do it. Let's open and close PHP tags and let's echo admin URL, and inside the single quotes, let's write admin-ajax.php. We save it, semicolon, save it. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh. If we access the source code and we check the form, you will notice that inside our data attribute data URL, we have the full URL of the location of our admin ajax.php file. That is the file that we have to point to if we want to do an AJAX call. But these things, we already know it because we saw that in previous lesson. Let's keep going and let's keep coding our stuff. So now we have the data URL. We can access it and store it inside this AJAX variable. Let's scroll back up in our AJAX function and let's copy this entire function here, even if we're not gonna use it because it's pretty long, but let's copy its entirety because it's exactly the same structure. So we don't want to rewrite everything, but we're going to clean it a lot because we don't need all those functionalities. So first, let's have a $.ajax, open the regular brackets, curly brackets. We pass the URL, the AJAX URL variable, we have it. The type, it's post because we want to send a post request, not a get request. And here we can send all the data that basically are all these stuff. So we can replace the name with the name and the email with our email and the message with our message, and the action, instead of sunset load more, we have to change the action to our custom action to save the contact form. So sunset save contact form, or maybe something more clear, something like save user contact form. So we know that it's coming from the front end, it's coming from a user action. Here we can leave the error and here we can leave the success, but let's remove all this stuff, we don't need it, and let's just leave it like this for now. Let's save it. Before continuing though, I want to do a small security check because we're currently using HTML5 to detect if these type of fields are required, and we're stopping the submission of this form if these fields are empty. But could be that one of our users is using a really old browser that doesn't support HTML5, so this validation in the front end is not actually super safe, it's not super secure. So we have to do another validation by ourselves in JavaScript, and what we have to validate is basically 1, 2, or 3. Name, email, and message. And if one of these, let me check also, this one is required, yes. And if one of these is not defined, we can return a unique error, a specific error, and I highlight that specific input. For now, we're not going to take care of response in the front end, like visual response. We're going to just take care of avoiding the form, the AJAX, to be submitted, to submit the AJAX request if one of these 3 fields is empty. So let's do it by writing an if statement. Name, it's equal empty, or email, it's equal to empty, or the last one is message, it's equal to empty. Here we are gonna, for now, just because we are coding this stuff, just return a console log to print an error. Inputs are empty, or like even better, required inputs are empty, semicolon, and to stop the execution of this script and avoid to execute the AJAX call in case of this error, we can just write a return. This return is gonna stop the execution of the script at this point. We're not gonna go on a second line, we're not gonna continue if this if statement is true. So it's one of these three variables, it's empty. Let's save it and let's check now. In order to check, of course, we have to deactivate temporarily these required stuff. So let's select all of three and then just like remove it for now. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh. Now we don't have any HTML5 validation. Let's access our console. And if we submit, nothing's gonna happen, and here we have the required inputs are empty. If we access our network monitor, you will see that even if I click, nothing is happening. We are not getting, let me clear this. Every time we have an AJAX call, something is gonna happen. Something is gonna get recorded in a network tab of our browser inspector. Because we are blocking, we're returning this, nothing is happening, so the AJAX call is not being triggered, and this is perfect. This is what we want. Let's go back and put back the required tag for HTML5. Of course, this is a super ugly solution. It's something that it doesn't work for the user because it doesn't have any visual input, but it's just a temporary solution for us to build the backend. As soon as we are done with the backend, we can take care of the front end by creating more fancy stuff and more user inputs responses for him to understand. Now what we have to do, we have to create our actual function here and hook it to the AJAX request. So to do that, let's copy the action that we defined. Let's go inside our ajax.php, that is the file that we are using to handle all the AJAX requests, and we can duplicate these two declarations because we're gonna basically reuse the same exact code. Here we're gonna maintain the wp underscore ajax underscore noprev and the wp ajax underscore, and then we're gonna replace this sunset load more with the new function that we defined. So the new action that we're passing in AJAX. My case is sunset save user contact form, and the second one also sunset save user contact form. This is the function that we wanna call, and the function name doesn't have to be identical to this one. We can call it whatever we want. So in my case, to streamline the things, I'm gonna call it sunset save contact. And also here, let's repeat. Let's copy this function call that we created, and let's scroll down at the end, and let's create this function sunset save contact, open and close brackets, curly brackets. We're not passing any value inside the function, but we need to collect all the information that are coming from our AJAX request. $title, it's gonna be equal to $_post title. Duplicate the $email, it's equal to the post email, and let's duplicate this, the $message variable, it's equal to the post message. So now we have all the information that we need in order to save the post, and to save the post into our backend, so to save something, all this information inside our database passing through our custom post type, we need to use a built-in function of WordPress called wp insert post, and the function, of course, it's going to be called wp underscore insert underscore post. This function is really powerful because allows us to save whatever information in whatever post type. We can save just the simple standard stuff, something that I'm doing here, like the title and the message are going to be the title of the post and the content of the post, but the email is a custom meta field. We can save that also with this built-in function, and also we can save, if we want, a custom category in a custom taxonomy, activating custom tags, and so on. All the functionalities that our standard post has in the backend, we can recreate it with this front-end visualization thanks to an AJAX call, and and thanks to this function. This function has built in the sanitize post function. So everything that passes through this function automatically is sanitized by WordPress and validated with all the sanitization that WordPress does. So it's pretty safe. We don't have to do anything. The only thing that WordPress doesn't do is stripping potentially dangerous tags like HTML, JavaScript, or PHP tags. So the only thing that we have to do before calling this function is using the function wp strip all tags in our post title, and then in our post email, and then in our message. This function of WordPress will remove all the HTML, JavaScript, and PHP tags from the messages that the user is sending. You could potentially not do this for the post message because the post message is saved inside the content input of our post type, and the content is managed by the tiny MCA, so the visual content editor, the visual text editor that allows us to write HTML. So we could potentially avoid this. It's not a security issue, but in my case, I don't really want the user to write any type of HTML or other tags other than simple text in my message. So I'm gonna strip all tags also to the variable message. Before calling this function and keep going with our tutorial, let's return all these information with a return in order to be visible in our console. So let's return the title, concatenate, and put a comma, and then let's return email, and then concatenate again, let's put a comma again, and then let's return the message and semicolon. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. Let's check if our process worked. So right now we have the HTML5 validation in place. Let's write our message here. Let's access our network page. Let's clear all the information of the network and let's submit. So right now, you notice what we had here. We had a status 200. It means that it was a successful call with a post method to the admin ajax.php. And if we click here, we access the header. No header was found, all the cookies information. But if we check the response is 0. The response is 0 because, as always, every time we do an AJAX call, we have to die. Not we have to die, we don't have to die. I mean, we have to write the die function of PHP in order to avoid for the built-in AJAX function of WordPress to return 0. Just it's a security precaution. In order to return whatever we want and avoid like override what WordPress is doing with our custom function, we have to return the die. So don't die, but write die at the end every time you have a function that is connected to an AJAX request. And also, because right now we're just running a test, we can remove the return and just echo whatever message we're gonna have here. So that's actually this, I just found out, just remember, this is the name, it's not a post title. So let's write name, let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. And just as a suggestion, I suggest you to refresh multiple times or flush the cache, because we are calling file that is cached inside our browser, and because it's not a file in the front end that gets automatically refreshed when we reload the browser, most likely we will keep pointing to the old version of the file. So if something doesn't work, if you keep getting 0 as a response of our AJAX call, just remember to flush the cache. That's a really common issue that sometimes that can stress you out, but just flush the cache and try again. So it shouldn't be a problem. Now let's rewrite the usual information, and then this is my message. Let's submit. We have great our 200 post request, and if we access the response, we have the full list of the name that we submitted, the email, and the message, and that's perfect. Here we can check the parameters that we are submitting from the form, so the parameters match, and that's perfect. Our AJAX call works. Now, the thing that we have to do, we have to just start using the WP insert post in order to save the post in our contact form custom post type. But we're gonna take care of this later in the next lesson. I don't want to do too much in this lesson because we just created an AJAX call, we did a bunch of validation, and we created the backend functionality to save. The WP insert post, it's a pretty important function of WordPress, so I want to dedicate an entire episode about this function to thoroughly explain it and thoroughly test it with you. So it's pretty much it for today's lesson. I hope you enjoy. If you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want, you can spend a couple of minutes to check the Support Me page on my website, where you can find all different ways and methods to support me, support my channel, and help me to do better videos and better tutorials for you. Thank you again, guys, and until the next lesson, happy coding!